1 million seeds? Check. A couple $100 in soil? Check. But now I need to start on the job that I've been putting off all winter, and I need to make a couple thousand paper pots. I really like paper pots, and the reason why I'm going to be making thousands of them this year is we are starting seedlings to sell. And I wanted to use paper pots not only because they work well, but because they're not made out of plastic. If I was to sell seedlings in like the little plastic containers like what you get normally at a nursery, that's going to be a lot of plastic waste that I'm generating. And having experimented with paper pots before, I know they work quite well. So I'm excited to do this. And I've seen a lot of people online and they don't know about the paper pots. So I want to share with you just how simple it is and just how great it works. For starting seeds, it means it's officially spring, so ignore all the snow. To make paper pots, super simple. What you need is a wine bottle. The reason why it needs to be a wine bottle is it needs to have an indent on the bottom. So if it's not a wine bottle but it has an indent on the bottom, you're good to go. And then the wine bottle is a really good size. If you use like a skinnier bottle, it's gonna give you a smaller pot. So the wine bottle with an indent makes like a really good kind of 4-inch pot size paper pot. But you can use whatever you have in the house to make something of whatever size paper pot you want. This is just standard recipe. Next, you need paper. I use newspaper. I find like a full-size newspaper sheet. I tear this into 3 equal-ish sections. Very technical. I usually use scissors, it works better. And then I use 1 sheet per pot. It's a good idea not to roll these up on top of snow because you don't want them to get wet. They start to come apart a little bit once they get wet. So what you want to do is you want to place the bottle halfway or however deep you want the pot. If you want to do quite large paper pots, use a half sheet of newspaper and then you can make the pot as deep as you want. When I make these, I sit down and I make a ton of them. And so I make them a little bit taller. And then if I don't want the plants to be as deep for the rooting, I just put less soil in it. So that way I like to have a deep pot for my tomatoes, but if it's something that's not gonna be in there for as long, I just don't have to put as much dirt in, but I can sit down and make them all. So grab the bottle, starting on one edge, just start rolling the paper onto the bottle. Try to get the top level. If you use a clear bottle, you can see through it to see what you're doing on the other side. Once it's rolled on, you tuck it in, going around in a circle, pushing it into the indent in the bottom of the bottle till you go all the way around, and then you pull the pot off. Inside this pot, it's gonna be all bumped up, and it's not necessarily gonna sit nice and flat. That is fine because when you go to put the soil in, what's gonna happen is you're actually gonna pack down the inside of the pot and the weight of the soil is gonna hold the pot together. So there you go, super simple. I'm gonna be making a couple thousand of these, so it's gonna take me a lifetime and it's gonna be super annoying. But if you're doing up a tray or two of plants, I find it to be a really good option. I really liked them last year because I could bottom water on the plants, like the paper absorbs really nicely. And then when my plants were ready to get into the ground, I didn't have to do anything. I just planted the paper pot plant completely into the ground. I didn't have to unpot it. And so normally I don't do starts on things like squash and cucumbers and other stuff like that because they really don't like getting transplanted. And I'm super excited to experiment with these this year because they technically won't be getting transplanted. So I think this is a good way to get a kickstart on those more fussy seeds without having to deal with transplant shock. Let's do this one more time with a close-up. Paper about halfway. You just roll it. You take it and then push it into the bottom, going in a circle. You don't have to be fancy. And then pull it off. If you did it tight, I find twisting it makes it slide off smoothly. And then there you go, paper pot. I've seen a lot of just horrible ideas for seed starting online, and having used the paper pots before and knowing how successful they are, it drives me crazy to see people talking about using eggshells or citrus peels or even egg carton, which is a similar idea. It's just not going to work because it's so small. Who is growing seedlings that are only going to be in there for a couple weeks? The paper pots, because you can adjust them to whatever size you need, I think are a really good option. And I know there is the paper pot maker, but honestly, the wine bottle trick works so well. For me personally, I don't think I'd ever invest into it. I don't see it working any better than what I already use. There is one complication to the paper pots that I've found, which is the fact that they are a little delicate. Once you plant your plant in there and you water it, you're dealing with wet newspaper, and wet newspaper just isn't going to be able to be handled a ton. How I keep my paper pots is in an actual tray so that I can bottom water them, and once they're in there, they don't get moved until they're, being moved to be planted out or to be sold to someone who's going to be taking it home and planting it out. The fact they're so delicate is part of what makes them work so well. I had some plants that were actually in there for, over 8 weeks, and the roots started to grow out of the bottom of the pots. So I knew that planting them directly into the ground was going to work quite well because I'd already seen that the roots are strong enough to break through the delicateness of the newspaper. So that does make it a great direct transplanting pot. It's not going to limit your plants at all when you put them into the ground, but the flip side is you are going to have to be careful with them. Let me know down below if you have any other questions that I haven't covered in here about the paper pots. I've used them for 2 years now, and I've been really happy with the success. Or if you have any tips, let us know too, because, I definitely, there's probably stuff I can learn about them. Last year I made a couple hundred, and they went together pretty fast. I was able to, probably make about 50 an hour, and that was like a watching TV type task. If you're new here and you love gardening, make sure to subscribe. We're going to be growing thousands of seedlings this spring, and we're starting up a farm where we're going to be selling lots of stuff in the summer. So there's not much going on right now, but it's going to start to look really beautiful around here, and maybe we'll have a few other tips to share. And I will see you guys all next time.